we're in a crop of spring barley. Again, it's on your sheet. Have you found it? Page 5, if you're still looking for it. A crop of taberna. It says Mickle taberna, but the Mickle is in the field across the way. And while it mightn't be here, I just will make the point that I had walked through that one earlier on, and certainly there's bits of Rinco in it. There's also bits of mildew in it. Just to be conscious that it's on the move, because with all the rain, if you're getting the vegetative growth, you are getting softer crops, and it's just getting a grip in there. So sown on the 22nd of March, after winter barley, 9 stone per acre, and it was dressed with manganese. We mentioned, at least, maybe we didn't mention, we did, that manganese is an issue on all of the land, and seed dressings generally were used as the first treatment. And if you have an underlying problem, you really have to do something at the very early stages in a crop if manganese is an issue, particularly spring crops. Either seed dressings or the likes of what the wolf tracks are doing with the fertilizer. You've got to have something there from the word go. So many times, and I'm seeing it all over the country as I'm driving at the moment. It's not all manganese, I grant you, but where manganese is an issue, you're seeing the crops and they're yellow with the green tracks up through them. And people will wait until, not now, but a week ago, they'll be waiting until mid-tillering to go out with the herbicides and then put on the trace elements. Yield is gone before you go. You know, once the crop is looking yellow, you're losing yield potential. Like it or lump it, that's what's going on. You just can't afford to have your crops going backwards, and going backwards is what's happening. Okay, going on to the husbandry then on the 9th of May, which is, what, about a fortnight ago now, is it? Ballpark. It got, for weeds, Oxytril CM, trace elements and aphids. The lads tell me that the reason that Oxytril CM went in is that the land here has sulfonylurea resistant weeds, something that is becoming a bigger issue for an awful lot of people. And you know, you've got to recognise the fact that if you're not getting consistent control, you've got to be doing something else. It's a consequence of just pouring on the same chemistry year after year after year. Weeds, plants, no, I better go with weeds. Weeds are diseases. Diseases are probably easier, but I'm going to stay with weeds. Chickweed is a weed, right? But chickweed isn't one weed. Everything, there's variation in everything. We're people. Look around you. How many of us are the same? Put in a barrier for height going out the gate. Who will get out at under 6 foot? Well, I will. How many won't? A few won't, you know. And you're using, there's selection going on all the time. And every time we go in with chemicals, we're selecting something. You're now being told you have a resistance issue in the background with aphids because we only use the one family of aphicides. We know, if you're wheat growers, you know the issue that's there with the septoria control, what we had with the strobs and the triazoles. We're putting chemicals under phenomenal pressure and then using the same family time and time again. So there's no better selection process. And that's what we've been doing. So we shouldn't be surprised that we're ending up with problems. And that is what's going on. So anyway, that's why it was Oxytril relatively early on. Oxytril is a product, I used to use that years ago. And I used to use it at the 2-leaf stage of the crop at 1/4 of a litre per hectare to get the first flush of weeds coming up. And it always worked wonders for me. It took so much pressure out of subsequent disease control and the timing of subsequent disease control. I'm not saying that you should be doing it, I'm only saying it's a product that I was using, and Oxytril will be gone after this year, I think. Is that right, John? Yeah, we're going to use, it's a double active ioxinol, bromoxinol, we think, I'm pretty sure, and bromoxinol is gone, ioxinol is still about, I think. Is that right? So look, we're losing products continuously, and that's one of the key tools that I would always recommend if you're dealing with weeds that are resistant to sulfonylureas. Subsequently, we got Presite Max coming in. That was to try and catch everything else, John, wasn't it? Mainly, I think mainly Speedwell was the target of the original, the first herbicide. And then the Presite was going after everything else. Hurler going in there, generally being added in, possibly for some chickweed that might be dodgy, but cleavers would be the major target that most of us would be using Hurler for. and a bit of Psychocell going in to help thicken up the areas that might have been a bit thinner because we all have these spots in the field. So that's what's been done to date. Disease-wise, it's already been sprayed with Zephyr, Axial for wild oats, and Adigar with the Axial. And you know, there is certainly disease on the move. Rinco is on the move. Where I've looked in this spot, I didn't find anything, but it's fairly easy to find it next door, both the mildew and the Rinco. And I know from around the country that it's moving as well. One point that might be worth making in passing is that this year, probably some of the Rinco products are appearing to be under pressure. Life isn't easy for them, and basically, really what we're saying is, don't rely on single actives, regardless of how good you thought the single active used to be. So in a sense, there's a warning in that. If you're going in, make sure you're covered across more than one family. Fertilizer on this, there's 175 kilos of nitrogen, 30 kilos of phosphorus, and 100 kgs of potassium gone in there. P and K, that would kind of be a good normal dressing for something like an index 2 soil. I don't know what the index are. I'm going to guess they're about index 2 or 3, Larry, are they?
Yeah, basically, it's kind of an average. What we're actually doing here is variable rating.
Okay. I'm delighted to hear that. Because it's amazing the number of tillage fields in the country that are big fields, where if you did go in to spot test them, the results come back all over the shop. I'll quote my own, I go from P's of 2.8 to 57. The problem is, if you put the 57 with the 2, it says that I'm 16 and I can't put out P anywhere in the place. But some of the land is deteriorating and more of it has surplus. So that's the issue. These are things that are happening when you're tilling fields for a number of years. The question is that if you come in there on that field, and I'm just picking this field, and you do the same thing uniformly on the field for 20 years, why should differences now appear? That's the thing that most people can't get their heads around. So, and you know, practically speaking, you'd say there's no reason. It's the dung from 20 years ago or 30 years ago that's making the difference. Realistically, when you go and look, what you'll frequently find is that you get different soil types, different makeups of the soil in different parts of the field, and that makeup of the soil is what holds the nutrition better or worse. If it holds it better, it builds. If it holds it worse, it drops. And that is what's happening. So it's a comment I would make to all tillage farmers tilling worn land. If you go back out and you start putting on organic manures and you build up the fertility and the soil structure, within 4 or 5 years, you'll find everything will be grand again. It'll all level up. But you won't have any more P where you had less. It's just that what's there will be more available, particularly more available to the plant. And if it's more available to the plant, it's also more available to the soil test. So we'll be going back to where we were 30 years ago, being careful about what soil tests are actually telling us. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. You're doing grid testing, Larry, here, aren't you? Correct. Yeah, because I think this was one of the examples that was given to us a number of years ago when we had a precision farming workshop going on and talked about the way these variations come. One of the comments that I would make, and I'm holding my own hand up doing this, is that we did variable application based on soil test results, but we did soil test results based on where we knew the crop was always lighter on the blade of the combine. Nothing sophisticated. You all know that. The most important day to be in your field is the day the combine is in there. And if you hire a contractor, don't apologise for sitting in the cab. You'll learn more sitting in the cab about what's wrong with your field than you will from any other day of the year, because you'll see that crop going up and down. He doesn't have to have a yield monitor. You see it on the blade. And that's what tells you, if you build up that picture in your head after a number of years, you're telling yourself where your field is letting you down. The comment that I want to make is that we did that assessment based on our eyes. We then went out with P and K and lime, based on where our eyes had been telling us we had problems. 1 year later, we had nothing to see. The crop had picked up completely in the 1 year. But what that told me instantly is that now I have to watch the language, I'm being taped. What you have to watch is, if you can no longer be told, if the crop is not telling you where the issues are, how will you know where to test and where to variably apply in the future if you don't have some other basis on which to make decisions? And for that exact reason, on the farm that I'm involved with, we moved over to precision farming, to doing soil conductivity tests to give us a map of where the soil is variable in the field. We then looked at that relative to the results and where we knew the crops were poor, and lo and behold, the correlation was good enough for me, and I'm not that easily convinced. So now we have no control over the amount of P&K that goes out. All we know is that when we're done, we have this amount on average applied to the field, because the computer tells the spreader how much P to apply in each run of the drill as we go. To try and keep it right over time, having got it right, we have to keep it right, because the places that were low initially will be the places that will leak most of the nutrients over time again. And the trick is to be one step ahead of them, because we can't afford to let any square metre of the crops we're growing yield below par for the sake of a kilo of something, whatever the case might be. I'd make no apologies for repeating what I would be writing fairly often, and that is that varieties like Taberna, Mickle are well capable of averaging 4 tonne per acre on a farm average yield dry. They're well capable of doing that. Everything that stops them from doing it is your fault. That's not meant to insult anybody, it's meant to get people to think about not the difference between product A, product B, bottle C, as the case might be, but getting the soil right to have a soil that's able to grow 4 tonne, because once it starts growing, it pushes on in. I was in a field of winter barley the other day. It's about the only crop that I do expect to see 4 tonne plus out of, but it was after beans, and holy smoke was it showing the beans in the field. You know, rotation, soil fertility, they all combine, but it's not an instant process, guys. It's not instant. You know, my experience was that it's taking me 5+ years of organic matter going into the system before you begin to see the uniformity in the crops and the yield starting to go up. And I'm kind of happy to say that we've gone up over the tonne an acre average farm yield, and I don't think I'm finished yet. I hope I'm not anyway, because the varieties of wheat we grow are well past 5 tonne in terms of what the genetics are doing. So if there's no other message you get tonight, the genetics of the crop are capable of delivering you 4 tonne plus. 5 years ago, you'd said, Andy is talking rubbish. There's another phrase that you would have used, and I can't use it at this moment, okay? But came 2011, and a lot of you saw these yields happening. Come 2014, a lot of you saw these yields happening, but you're only getting them in one field, because you're only getting them in the best fields with the best capability in them. Bring all the others up. That's what we need to survive. 30 years ago, Ireland was down as the highest yielding wheat yields and second highest yielding barley yields in Europe on average. We've given all that away. If I look at the average yield for Ireland over the past 20 years, it went up to 15 years ago and it's been falling since. It stayed flat for a while, it's been falling since. Spring barley is doing better. Spring barley on balance is flat. But yet the genetics we're planting are better year on year. We have to ask ourselves the question, are we farmers or are we not? Because the farmers have to grow the ground, look after the soil look after you. Because that's what we've stopped doing for an awful long time. Just looking at the crop when I pulled it up, the plant I pulled perfectly clean, fairly certain just from feeling the stem that we're gone well past first node on the stronger stems here. We were in the other field as well. First node always done, some of you will have seen me do this before, just by putting the knife down the center of the stem. Just that way it gives you a complete picture of everything that's happening. You can see first node appearing, where the head is, where all the remaining leaves are coming from. Basically, it's a telescopic structure, a bit like a 4-stage ram on a tipping trailer. One comes up first, and when that's up, then it pushes the next one. That comes up, and then it pushes the next one. Nodes, I will tell you again, the nodes, which is the bridge across, all that is the junction box between the leaf and the stem. That's all it is. It's not there to damn you, to torment you, and it's certainly not there so that you know what growth stages is which. It's used for that purpose, but that's not what it's there for. It's the junction box. It's where the leaf is plumbed into the stem to send nutrient, to take in nutrients from the roots and to push down carbohydrates to go back to the grain or make new leaves, whatever is going on at that point in time.